Hi, I'm Susie Garden, and this is the Ageless and Awesome podcast. I'm an age-defying naturopath and clinical nutritionist, and I'm here to bust myths around women's health and aging so that you can be ageless and awesome in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. The Ageless and Awesome podcast is dedicated to helping women through perimenopause and menopause with great health, a positive mindset, and outrageous confidence. Hit subscribe or follow now, and let's get started. Hello, gorgeous one, and welcome to today's episode of the Ageless and Awesome podcast. Today, I'm starting a new little series on perimenopause and thyroid disease because, well, actually, the reason why is what this podcast is all about today. And I'm just going to probably dive right into it because you know what? When you reach your 40s, a whole bunch of different symptoms arise, right? And, you know, you might just think this is the stage of life that you've entered, or maybe there's something more at play. So I wanted to explore thyroid conditions because there's a lot of similarities in the symptoms that come up, and I think it's really important to be able to recognize what is normal and what perhaps needs a little bit of further investigation. So let's look at the link between perimenopause and your thyroid. So for those of you who don't know, your thyroid is a gland. It's like your master kind of controller of hormones, really, of some hormones anyway. And it lives in your neck, kind of on the bottom third of your neck. And some of you might be very familiar with what that is, particularly if you've got thyroid conditions in your family. But if you don't know a lot about it, even just go and Google thyroid just to see where it is. It's kind of cool. It's a little butterfly-shaped organ, and it's really, really important. And the thing is, there's quite a bit of overlap between perimenopause and thyroid conditions, including the age of onset, the symptoms, and the driving factors behind it all. So firstly, let's talk about symptoms because that is often something easy for us to recognize because we feel it in our bodies, right? So some of the most common symptoms you see during perimenopause include irregular periods, heavier periods, hot flushes, weight gain, fatigue, brain fog, memory loss, dry skin, hair loss, thinning hair. Sounds awesome, right? Gut symptoms such as constipation, diarrhea, bloating, aging skin, and heart palpitations. And I'm not even listing all of the symptoms, but these are relatively common. And then if we look at the symptoms of an underactive thyroid, it can be irregular periods, weight gain, fatigue, brain fog, dry skin, hair loss, thinning hair, a hoarse throat, increased soreness and pain in the body, constipation and bloating, feeling cold all the time, mood swings, and irritability. So notice there are a whole bunch of similarities. So it's kind of no wonder that many women are left wondering if it's perimenopause or if it's some sort of thyroid condition, especially if there are people in your family that maybe have thyroid conditions, so you might be more familiar with those symptoms. So, you know, there's this stage of life. Perimenopause will generally start sometime in your 40s, maybe even in your 30s. And thyroid conditions also tend to start around this age more than at any other stage of life. For example, Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid disease, is most common between the ages of 30 and 50. So I'm sure it's no surprise to you, but guess what can drive both? You guessed it, inflammation, you know, one of my favorite topics. Chronic inflammation, stress, poor sleep, nutrient deficiencies, and insulin resistance are just a few factors that I see over and over in both perimenopause and thyroid clients. So, can it be perimenopause and your thyroid at the same time? Well, yeah, It can be one or the other, but it's not unusual for a woman to experience both. And as we've seen, the delicate balance of hormones can be thrown off during your 40s, leaving you prone to both sets of symptoms. These two conditions also feed into each other. An underactive thyroid can exacerbate the symptoms of perimenopause by slowing the metabolism down. The hormone shifts during perimenopause can trigger autoimmunity, reduce the amount of free thyroid hormone, and reduce conversion of thyroid hormone. Now, the good news, because let's face it, a lot of what I just listed there is pretty depressing. But the good news, many of the steps you need to tackle your thyroid health are similar to those with perimenopause. So it all comes back to foundational habits for your overall well-being. So next podcast, or next week rather, I'm going to explore more about how to support your thyroid health during perimenopause. But I wanted to get into a little bit of the biggest issue for many people, and a lot of the clients that I see, of course, with my interest in weight loss is, of course, weight gain. There are dozens of symptoms for both perimenopause and low thyroid function, but one that is the most stubborn, the most frustrating for many is the weight gain. And even though you may not have changed your diet or changed the amount of movement that you're doing, it creeps up and up no matter what you do. So, why is this the case? During perimenopause, there are multiple factors that feed into weight gain, like insulin resistance, changes to sex hormone balance, and the effects of chronic stress are just a few examples. When it comes to the thyroid, this is because your thyroid hormone levels drop. So these hormones run your metabolism. So your metabolism will burn less energy at rest than it normally would. And as a result, you'll start to store more energy as fat. And if you're experiencing both at the same time, it gets supercharged. And I cannot even tell you how many women I get either who apply for the GLOW protocol, and which includes metabolic balance, or that turn up in clinic that have this resistant weight gain. And they've tried all of the things and it's not shifting, and it's just getting more and more and more. And this is a real problem. So getting a handle on this as soon as possible is helpful, because the more weight you put on, the more resistance to weight loss you have, because as these fat cells accumulate, they start, particularly around the torso area, the belly, those fat cells start secreting things like estrogen and other hormones. They interfere with your hunger and satiety hormones, and this causes a real resistance to weight loss. And when you get sort of close to that 15, 20 kilos of being overweight, it just becomes that much more difficult. So it's totally possible to lose weight, by the way. Please don't feel like that's not possible for you. I work with many, many clients that have hypothyroidism, that have 25 plus kilos of weight to lose. And yes, it takes time and it takes commitment, but it absolutely can happen. So I do want you to know that if you're in that situation, please know that you can absolutely do something about it, but you need to act. You need to actually do something. And, with me, you can pick up a free call just to chat about what options might be available to you. I'll have a link in the show notes to book in for I'm calling them age-defying and weight loss strategy calls now. I'm going to do a podcast later in the week instead of my Q&A, just to talk about why I'm changing my language around this, because I think that's really, really important. Language and words, super important. But that's another conversation, so that will happen on Thursday. But if you're feeling this fatigue, feeling the heat, feeling sleeplessness, and the weight is piling on, just know the sooner you act, the easier it will be and the quicker kind of length of time it will be to get you back to feeling and looking like your old self. So if you're wanting to nurture your thyroid, get a handle on your metabolism, get a handle on your perimenopausal symptoms or your menopause symptoms, please book yourself in for an age-defying and weight loss strategy call so we can have a chat. I can let you know what opportunities might be available for you. If I'm not the right person for you, I may be able to point you to someone that is perhaps better suited, but please just do something. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I would love if you could leave me a 5-star review. I put my heart and soul into this podcast and I love doing it. And I also love it when I hear from you that I'm making a difference, and it helps to keep me going, to keep producing this content for you absolutely free. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Ageless and Awesome podcast. If you liked today's episode, please make sure you click the little plus button if you're on Apple Podcasts or the follow button if you're on Spotify so that you can get each new episode delivered to you every single week. If you like free stuff, and who doesn't, then head over to susiegarden.com and grab my 8 essential age-defying secrets every woman over 40 should know right now. Or if you'd like to continue the discussion, head over to Instagram and DM me at Susie Garden Wellness. I'd love to connect with you.